As the world condemns the brutal terror attacks on London Bridge, will Britain's approach to combating Islamic extremism change? A U.S. government-funded project aims to remove Liberia's children from hazardous work. And at the Tokyo Toy Show, a blend of old and new targets fans of all ages. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCorry. This is Africa 54. Now, British police have arrested 12 people in connection with Saturday night's terrorist attack in London, which left 7 people dead and close to 50 others injured. World leaders have condemned the attack and urged citizens everywhere to be vigilant. And many people expressed defiance in the face of terrorism, saying they will continue with their lives as usual. VOA's Zlatan Zahok reports.
At the busy Los Angeles airport, flights for London were filling up the day after the terror attack, as they do on any other day. People returning home to Britain and U.S. visitors said they were not changing their travel plans.
Just have to be cautious and keep living our life and not let it stop us.
We have to have confidence in the security mechanisms that are in place.
We've already bought the tickets for everything and we're staying right in the city.
The London Bridge area remained cordoned off Sunday as armed police and counter-terrorism officers combed the area where 3 attackers the night before drove a van into pedestrians and then jumped out and started stabbing people who were enjoying Saturday evening out. U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted a message saying we must stop being politically correct and get down to the business of security for our people. He scolded London Mayor Sadiq Khan for telling citizens there is no reason for alarm. Khan asked Londoners to be vigilant, but said the city is one of the safest in the world.
One of the things that these terrorists want to do is to disrupt our way of life. They want to stop us enjoying the freedoms that we have, enjoy us mingling and mixing on a Saturday night in the heart of London, having a good time. They want to stop us voting on Thursday in the general elections and enjoying the democracy that we have. We can't allow them to do that.
The attack in Borough Market, a popular London evening venue, comes 2 weeks after a suicide bomber attack at a pop music concert in Manchester. The performer, American singer and actress Ariana Grande, sang in Manchester Sunday night again at a benefit concert called One Love Manchester. Zlatan Zahok, VOA News, Washington.
Well, for more on Britain's latest terrorist attack, I'm joined by Henry Ridgewell from our London studios. Henry, first, you were in East London, where one of the suspects is from and where many arrests have actually been made. Talk a little bit about the mood there and the response of the local mosques.
Well, there's a lot of shock in the local community at the prospect that a terror plot was being made in their community, beneath their noses, without anybody really knowing what was going on. And there's a big police presence there, of course, and a huge number of journalists from across the world trying to get to the bottom of how this terror plot was made in a community where it's one of the sort of emblematic multicultural communities of London. People speak of the harmony between the different races and faiths. So within Barking itself, this region of East London, there's a lot of shock that this has taken place. I've spoken to imams and officials from 3 different mosques in the region today, and they all say that they are signed up to the government's so-called Prevent strategy, which aims to encourage Muslims to report any signs of extremism among members of the local community. It gives them specific contacts within the police, within local authorities, anonymous ways of reporting their concerns and so on. And they say they're as shocked and surprised as anybody else about this revelations that up to a dozen people have been arrested within Barking.
Now, Prime Minister Theresa May said that it seems like there's too much tolerance in Britain. What is this being interpreted to mean? What does she want to do differently?
I think she is alluding to the idea that many Muslims may be reluctant to report concerns over extremism, perhaps some feeling of distance between some Muslim communities and law enforcement officials or the state or society. But her comments have caused some division here within Britain. Of course, this comes in the week when the country is due to hold a general election on Thursday. There is some criticism of Theresa May herself, who of course was Home Secretary of Britain until she became Prime Minister last year, about cutting police numbers. So the big debate here is about how you can tackle this kind of extremism, how you can get to the root and tackle the roots of the extremism. Is it about closing down internet chat rooms and so on, and encrypted messages where these sorts of plots and these sorts of conversations and extremist propaganda can find a safe space? That's one of the key government messages among this. The opposition claim that, well, in fact, the problem is there's just not enough police. So this is really feeding into the general election campaign, feeding into a very febrile atmosphere.
Now, very quickly, those who are a little bit uncomfortable about the possibility of losing certain civil liberties, what are their best ideas? Are they suggesting anything different?
They are suggesting that more conversations need to be had between Muslim parts of society and other parts of society, that this talk by politicians of problems of extremism, of having to crack down hard on extremists, just drives divisions within society. And I think so you have the full spectrum of the arguments about how you can counter extremism here. And of course this is a conversation that's being had not only in Britain but across Europe, where we've seen a spate of terror attacks in recent years.
Most certainly. Henry, thank you very much for your reporting. That's Henry Ridgewell reporting live from our London studios. Now, in the wake of Saturday's attack at London Bridge, calls are raising for an overhaul of the legal system after 3 attacks in as many months. This is causing anxiety among London's large Muslim communities about the potential of decreased civil liberties and intolerance. VOA's Europe correspondent Luis Ramirez reports from London.
London began to pull itself together and look for a way forward. But British leaders are making it clear that after so many terrorist attacks in a short time, things cannot continue as they are.
There is, to be frank, far too much tolerance of extremism in our country. So we need to become far more robust in identifying it and stamping it out across the public sector and across society. That will require some difficult and often embarrassing conversations. But the whole of our country needs to come together to take on this extremism. And we need to live our lives not in a series of separated, segregated communities, but as one truly united kingdom.
But achieving that unity at a time the country increasingly finds itself feeling physical danger from within is easier said than done. There is fear of growing divisions between Muslims and non-Muslims and among Muslims themselves.
I'm a Londoner. I grew up in London. What happened yesterday was devastating. It got to me that that was not only an attack on those people, but it was an attack on me as well. They're trying to divide us.
Also prompting concerns, Britain is contemplating more internet surveillance and possible changes to detention laws, as well as extending sentences for terrorist-related offenses. Some see a larger question.
Some people are actually scared of repercussions and what might happen and things like that. But the way I understood it, it is not that at all. It's about asking us where we're heading as a society.
In the heavily Muslim eastern parts of the city, home to at least some of the attackers, there is tension, and statements are carefully worded.
One person did, and it is blame for whole community. No community want this type of barbarism. We condemn it. We should condemn together.
Residents living a few meters from Borough Market and London Bridge have a mission to not give the terrorists what they want.
We've got to get on. We've got, with the British people, we've been through worse, and we will continue to soldier on and club together as a community and as a nation.
Armed police were once a rare sight in Britain. Now, here at Borough Market, they are a reminder that 3 attacks in 3 months may have changed this country forever. Luis Ramirez, VOA News, London.
Well, American pop singer Ariana Grande made an emotional return to the British city of Manchester 2 weeks after several of our fans were killed in a terrorist attack at the end of a concert. About 50,000 fans crammed into the Old Trafford Stadium Sunday for the One Love Manchester concert, which raised money for the survivors of the May 22nd suicide bombing that killed 22 people. Now, the show was featured performances from some of the music's biggest acts, including Pharrell Williams, Katy Perry, Justin Bieber, and Grande herself.
Thank you guys so much, and I think that the kind of love and unity that you're displaying is the medicine that the world really needs right now.
Well, the concert was staged despite a deadly terrorist attack on the iconic London Bridge just hours earlier. Hundreds of police officers were deployed to the Old Trafford Stadium for extra security, including a few who joined with fans in a joyous dance. The British Red Cross said the concert raised more than $13 million for the We Love Manchester Emergency Fund. Now, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt each announced Monday the cutting of diplomatic ties with Qatar, accusing it of supporting terrorism. The countries made these separate moves in short succession, saying they would withdraw their diplomatic staff from Qatar and cut air and sea traffic to the country. Airlines in the region, including Saudi, Emirates and Etihad, all said they would halt flights to Qatar, while Qatar Airways announced a suspension of flights to Saudi Arabia. Yemen later joined in cutting off relations with Qatar, speaking from a diplomatic mission in Sydney, Australia, where Defence Secretary James Mattis, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson urged the nations to keep communications open.
We certainly would encourage the parties to sit down together and address these differences. And if there's any role that we can play in terms of helping them address those, we think it is important that the GCC remain unified. I do not expect that this will have any significant impact, if any impact at all, on the unified fight against terrorism in the region.
Well, Saudi Arabia, which leads a coalition of nations fighting in support of Yemen's government, also said Qatar's forces would be withdrawn from that fight. The Saudi state-owned SPA news agency said Qatar embraces multiple terrorist and sectarian groups aimed at disturbing stability in the region, including the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda, and promotes the message and schemes of these groups through their media constantly. Qatar's Foreign Affairs Ministry said the measures are unjustified and are based on baseless and unfounded allegations. Back in the United States, several people were killed in a workplace shooting near Orlando, Florida on Monday morning, according to the Orange County Sheriff's Office. The shooting occurred in an industrial area with multiple warehouses. The Sheriff's Office reported the situation is now contained, meaning there is no longer an active shooter. While the shooting took place almost a year after 49 people were killed on June the 12th, 2016, at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. At least 58 people were also injured. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, combating child labor in Liberia. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Well, 7 illegal migrants were found dead in a refrigerated truck which was left abandoned on the shores of Libya's Karabuli town, around 65 kilometers east of Tripoli. Libyan authorities found the truck with 34 African migrants held inside, 7 of whom appear to have died of suffocation. According to the migrants, smugglers packed them into the back of the truck to transport them to a boat which they would use to cross the Mediterranean. Now, the migrants said the truck driver left the vehicle on the side of the road after unknown gunmen began firing at the tires. They were locked inside the truck for 2 days before officers found them early on Sunday morning. About 168 million children worldwide are involved in child labor. Many of them work long hours in dangerous conditions. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, Liberia is one of 4 countries in the world that use child labor in rubber industry. It's that country's largest exporter and largest employer. Children on these rubber plantations are often forced to cut trees with sharp tools, handle pesticides, and haul heavy buckets of liquid latex. It's considered one of the worst forms of child labor and denies children the right to a basic education. Now, a U.S. government-funded project is working to remove Liberia's children from hazardous work. Well, here to tell us more is Martha Saldinger from Windrock International. It's a U.S.-based global nonprofit with a strong focus on agriculture. Welcome to our program today.
Thank you so much.
Now, first, we want to ask you how we got to where we are today, where children are working in this kind of conditions, and what kind of work you are aware that they do.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great question. You know, poverty drives a lot of decisions in marginalized households across the world, and Liberia in particular is still struggling to come out of the legacy of the Civil War. And then you couple that with the ravages of the Ebola epidemic, which set back the country economically and socially, and of course health. So rural families in particular look at their entire labor pool, and children are a part of the workforce. And of course, that's fine for children to do certain tasks, but there are tasks that are dangerous and
really
exploitative.
Dangerous. And I know that your organization works hard to try and implement this program to remove children from this kind of terrible conditions. How do you do it?
Well, the Actions to Reduce Child Labor program in Liberia, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor, works on multiple levels. First of all, we aim to mobilize communities to raise awareness about what the hazards are. 85 million children of the 168 million that are working in child labor are in hazardous child labor. So those are the children who are really at high risk. We work by getting children into school and by offering families alternative livelihoods that are very supportive of their household needs. So instead of being right on the margins, gives people a chance to earn better.
We know that in some of these areas, perhaps this is the only way that some of the families can survive. Are there certain types of work that can be considered okay for children to perform? Because not every type of work is illegal, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, growing up learning how to do things is a part of what we do as we go through childhood and adolescence. So not all work is hazardous or illegal, but what deprives children of their education, what harms them morally or socially, those are the things we consider to be hazardous.
Well, now we know that the U.S. is cutting back on its budget, supporting especially those kind of programs. How do you make the case that the U.S. taxpayers' money should be used to invest in such kind of programs in Africa, faraway land?
Great question. For me, it's sort of a twofold answer. I see on the one hand, the economic drivers. We are in a global economy, and what we buy comes from many places around the world. And frankly, if we are buying products that are made from cheaper child labor, our own American workforce is being undermined. There's a moral dimension, too. I cannot divorce the morality from the question. And children have a right to an education to grow up healthy and not to be compromised. So I think we...
the World Day Against Child Labor is coming up this month.
It is.
Question is, you mentioned something about awareness. Where do you want to create or raise this awareness more? Is it in Africa itself, or perhaps this should be done worldwide, outside of the continent?
Well, we have a lot of work to do in Africa, but it's beyond Africa. Child labor occurs around the world, and we want to be raising awareness in the United States. And in fact, the Department of Labor has recommended that we look up on their Sweat and Toil app. You can find out where your products are made. So we can raise our own awareness as well as in the world at large, and start in our own communities.
Yeah. And it is many products. I mean, I drive a car, we drive, and so what I think about who is working on this kind of farms that produce these things, right?
So
think about our children. Eh?
Rubber is one of the major crops in Liberia. It's very important to the economy, and we all use rubber products wherever we live in the world. So partly we need to work with industry, and Winrock does that very successfully, partnering with industry to eradicate child labor from supply chains. But it's a community, industry, government partnership.
Everybody. And to help those parents who think this is the only way their children can help them to kind of change their mindset and do something different. Thank you very much for sharing this with us.
Thank you, too.
For the sake of all the children of the world and those of Liberia.
Thank you.
Well, now, elsewhere, vote counting is ongoing in Lesotho's hotly contested national election. The Saturday election came just 2 years after the previous one, as the Southern African kingdom struggles with political instability. Prime Minister Pakalita Mosisili, who had been in power since 2015, lost a confidence vote in Parliament in March after several defections by ruling coalition lawmakers to the opposition eroded his support. Now, Democratic Congress Party leader Mosisili's main rival is All Lesotho Convention leader Thomas Tabane, who governed from 2012 until 2015. Now, the nation of 2 million people has been hit by several coups since independence from Britain in 1966. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, the latest toy trends from Japan. We'll be right back. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. UN troops in the Central African Republic secured the town of Bria after weeks of fighting displaced thousands. Ethiopian Prime Minister meets with Israeli President on his first official visit to Israel. In Libya, a senior official says that 7 migrants from sub-Saharan Africa have been found dead in an abandoned refrigerator truck near the Libyan capital. Finally, torrential rains and wind destroyed 1,000 makeshift homes in the northeastern part of Nigeria over the weekend, aggravating conditions for the thousands of people displaced by the Boko Haram violence. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to Africa 54. Here is what's trending. At the annual International Tokyo Toy Show, toy makers try to capture the attention of children and parents by blending new technology and ideas with classic toys and characters. And now this is the clear trend at this year's Gadget Fair, which brings 153 firms to show off their wares. In 2014, toys themed on hit animated films like Frozen helped improve sales. While Japan faces a declining birth rate, the domestic toy market saw 800 billion yen in sales in fiscal 2016, an increase of 0.3%. And working out in front of a wall of giant superheroes, if that doesn't motivate you to get fit, nothing will. Or at least that is the idea behind the No-Limit training facility in the North Hollywood's Earth's district. The indoor-outdoor gym is decorated with hand-painted street art and inspirational words aimed at bringing out your inner strength. And being both indoor and outdoor, you can choose between exercising in air-conditioned or rather conditioning or California sunshine. Now the artwork even glows at night when you're working out after dark. Not everyone can join the gym. You have to already be in excellent shape and be aware of exact exercises, machine usage, and workout practices. And that is what is trending today. Now, more than 1 billion people around the world rely on food from the ocean as their primary source of protein. But as the planet's oceans become more polluted, they are changing and all kinds of marine life are being impacted. VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir reported more than 4,000 government, scientific, business and civil society leaders will meet in New York to mobilize for action to stop the decline of our oceans.
Pollution, plastics, overfishing. The world's oceans are getting increasingly unhealthy, and man has a lot to do with it.
The ocean is indeed trouble. It's not stuff that's been occurring naturally. All of these problems are created anthropogenically, and so it's for us to find the solutions to them.
Climate change is also making the ocean sick. As the planet warms, more carbon dioxide is emitted into the atmosphere, and the ocean absorbs it. This turns its waters more acidic, harming marine life, especially shellfish and coral reefs. Add in weather trends such as El Niño, and some marine life migrate elsewhere, taking the livelihoods of fishermen with them. 2/3 of the global tuna catch comes from the Pacific Islands. But in 2016, the fish followed warmer currents eastward, away from their traditional fishing grounds near Palau and Papua New Guinea. This also made the tuna vulnerable to illegal fishing and cost the islands more than $600 million in lost revenue.
The more tuna that end up on the high seas, the more they are subject to illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing, a major threat to the sustainability of tuna fisheries and our economies.
Another threat to the oceans, plastic. Bottles, bags, containers, and even microscopic particles from polyester clothing and other products are dangerous as fish ingest them and then wind up on our dinner plates. Countries relying on beach tourism now realize that healthy oceans make for healthy economies. Indonesia is the world's second biggest ocean polluter after China, according to the Ocean Conservancy.
So the Indonesian government now is instituting laws which are going to stop plastic getting into it because, it's going to affect jobs on the land in the hotel industry if beaches are just full of plastic and the sea's full of plastic.
Healthy oceans directly contribute to poverty eradication, food security, health, clean water, renewable energy, sustainable livelihoods and decent work, economic growth, and climate regulation, just name a few.
Organizers at the UN's Ocean Conference expect a united call for action and a variety of voluntary national commitments to make the ocean healthy again. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
And that's our show. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When something loses its original shape or form, it does not look very natural or comfortable.
Bent out of shape.
Hey, did you tell Greg about my dinner party?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was invited.
Well, now he's all bent out of shape because I didn't invite him.
I'm sorry.